Welcome to the very first ever episode of the One Mind Syndicate Book Club, brought to you by One Mind Syndicate, obviously. I'm your host, Gershwin. I'm here with my two co-hosts,
The Sound Alchemist,
Docile Creature.
and we're going to be starting to read the Primarch series, starting off with Angron, Slave to Nuceria. Now, before we get into the book, I do want to tell you guys that today's video is brought to you guys by Audible. Audible is offering our listeners a free audiobook with a 30-day trial membership. Just go to the link down in the description below. It's that easy. Simply follow the link, and you'll be able to get the Angron, Slave to Nuceria book, just like we did, and it'll be free, and you can read along with us. Now, we're going to break up the review of the book into two parts. But before we get into the nitty-gritty of the thing, we do want to give you an overview of what we think of the actual book without spoiling anything. So, what do you guys think of the book? Would you recommend it?
Honestly, yes, because throughout the whole inception of 40K, you see Angron as like a one-face character, always angry all the time, and you see a little bit more behind who this person is besides just anger.
It does give you an interesting glimpse into what Angron is like outside of what people think he is, like just like the angry murder beast. And that's interesting.
The surprising thing that I found is that throughout the entire thing, it's Angron specific, but not really. You are getting the character development of Angron through his actual battle brothers. So the World Eaters and the Warhounds and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's really a story of like how the Legion sees Angron and how they're evolving as Angron tries to change the Legion.
At the end, it did change my perspective about Angron after reading this. But another thing that it did is it made me love Karn way more.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Also, a big part of this book is not so much the upbringing of the Primarch, but more the dilemma of the Butcher's Nail.
That's really the villain of the book, I think, is the Butcher's Nails, not really anything else.
And I really liked how it touched on the dilemma of not just the Legion within itself, the Legion against Angron, but also the Emperor was painted in a way that I think we hear about online a lot, like he's a piece of shit, but then you read the book and you realize like, oh yeah, like he wasn't painted that well. Mm-hmm. So I wonder if that's going to continue in these Primarch series where we get traitor Primarchs. Their books are going to paint the Emperor as this piece of shit, and then the Loyalists are going to paint them as like, oh no, he's awesome.
I would hope so, because that makes us like relate to these characters that are evil and like see where they're coming from and their perspective.
Yeah. Now, there's a lot more that we obviously want to talk about, but we would spoil things for you guys. So go over to the link down in the description below. Read alongside with us. For right now, we're just going to go over the prelogue and chapter 1 through 15 of the actual book.
So guys, let's go ahead and join us in reading this awesome Primarch novelization, Angron, Slave of Nuceria, by going onto this link down in the description below.
Also, stay to the end of the video because we'll be telling you guys kind of a list of what books we're going to be reading and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, let's get into the prologue.
Yeah, so the prologue, it starts you off with a bunch of Space Marines that are getting ready to get implanted with the Butcher's Nails.
Yes.
One specifically, right? A librarian who, like all librarians before him, have died in this process, and he is determined to be the one that succeeds and survives the surgery. And from what I've gotten, it's very early on. Like, these are the first few that have tried to bring the Butcher's Nails. It's not like this is a tested and proven surgery or anything, and it's just that he's a librarian that makes it difficult. They're still trying to figure out how to make this work in general.
Yeah. I mean, the big thing, because the librarian, this is the only character that I'm going to remember his name, and only because I wrote it down, but Ayakari is the librarian who's going to take this thing. He's a Terran-born librarian. So let's get into like that whole aspect, because the book doesn't do too much detailing on the actual Legion and where the Battle Brothers come from, but from our like lore knowledge, we know that the majority of the Warhounds come from Terra. And as the Great Crusade has progressed, they've died, and they've obviously been, what is it called? Like
recruiting?
Yeah, reinforced and recruiting from different worlds. One of them is Nuceria, Angron's world. So Ayakari being a Terran born and saying, like, forget the traditions of the Warhound. We have a Primarch now. He wants us to get the Butcher's Nails. The Butcher's Nails are killing, like, Battle Brothers back, like, left and right. I'm still going to do it because this is the wishes of my Primarch. It just goes to show, like, the level of devotion that these Space Marines have for a father. I really thought it was weird that the book kept explaining, or they kept referring to Angron as father.
Yeah.
Like sons. I thought that was weird.
I don't know if I should wait, but I found it interesting the relationship between Angron and the rest of his legion, and
for sure.
even individually each character, because some of them, I feel like some of them, like, on their own, like, don't like Angron.
Oh yeah.
But then in his presence, they're like, shit, like, this is my guy. Like, this is daddy.
Yeah.
And even though, like, when they're away from him, they're like, what is he doing? Like, what is going on here?
The prologue really showcases the division between the Battle Brothers themselves of what you just described. Some of them were like, yeah, it's great that he's here, and the others were like, no, like, Angron is killing us.
It's also interesting because Ayakari, that's what his name is. There's so many names in this book that I'm not going to remember.
Yeah.
But even knowing the outcome, I was still rooting for this guy.
Me too. Like, they did a really good job of you sympathized with this guy.
Like, he's the one. He's so determined that he's going to be the one to make his dad proud, even though what he is. And it was just like, damn. And
I have to be honest, because I read all these chapters twice. The first time around, I didn't pick up on the fact that he died. Because there's a portion where the Butcher's Nails are implanted and he's going through his, like, warp psychic kind of thing, and it's describing, like, warp flames devouring and all that kind of stuff. And in my mind, it's like, oh, it's just made up. He's not actually dying. He dies. Yeah. I was expecting him to come back during the first read, and it's like, where's Ayakari? Where's Ayakari? And it's like, oh no, he's dead.
And then later on in the book, they're like, oh yeah, they just blew a massive hole on the side of the ship. This is where he was when that happened. It's like, holy shit, this is dangerous.
It did a really good job of painting the scene of him entering, like, the, what is it called? The Apothecarion, and then a bunch of people just watching. And then they allude to, I think his name is Magos.
Yeah.
That's like the main character.
He wasn't there. He was viewing the implantations of the Butcher's Nails through, like, a servo skull, kind of showcasing that the head of the Legion doesn't agree with the Butcher's Nails, which will later become a big thing.
Yeah.
So.
It was also interesting, like, Ayakari even says after the surgery is kind of complete, everybody's looking at him like he's a bomb that's about to go off. Yeah. It's just like, what's going to happen right now? And then it does. And it's just like, damn.
The ticking.
Yes.
I think that was the best way to explain what Butcher's Nails do to you. And then there's a moment when Ayakari is looking at all those other Battle Brothers, and he thinks, like, those motherfuckers aren't even fucking, like, they're not doing what I'm doing. But that's the actual Butcher's Nails planting the seed of, what would it be, just aggression and conflict?
Aggression, yeah. I mean, because that is what the Butcher's Nails do. Yeah. They're supposed to heighten your senses to a point where all you see is red, you want to shed blood, and it's like a constant pain, or in this case, a ticking time bomb in your head to where you just explode in a rage of, like, bloodlust.
Yeah, the tick.
It was gruesome too. The way they described all the surgical stuff, I was just like, "Oh God, I'm not going to the doctors ever again."
Even though there's a really cool part where it's describing the pain that Ayakari is going through, but then the gene seeds kick in, and then all of a sudden it's like
the chemical.
Yeah, it's kind of overpowering. Not enough, and then I thought that was pretty cool.
And he's a badass because, like, the apothecary was like, "We can give you a nerve block," and, like, he's like, "Nah, I can take it."
But the growing theme, right, of the entire World Eaters is pain, and anger and all that kind of stuff. So that was pretty good. And then we move on to the first chapter, which I believe was when they make planetfall, right?
Well, the first chapter is when they're talking to, like, the envoys, the three messengers.
So the planet is Genna, but you guys remember the number? It's like 90.
Because it's the numbers based on the expedition and the planet that fell under compliance under that number. Yes. Throughout the whole Horus Heresy, that's how they, like, catalog these planets.
So it's one of those planets that was conquered by the Great Crusade.
And they said it was a relatively bloodless fight. Like, they pretty much just gave up.
Then they stopped responding to the Imperium, and in modern day 40K, we know that the Inquisition goes to investigate, but back then it was like, we'll just send a legion, and that's what they're doing. They're going in there to see like, hey, what's going on? And they meet three androgynous looking humanoids, which I thought was pretty cool, because it's like one of those aspects of 40K that it's in space and planets have different body types, so it only makes sense that humans would look alien to everybody else.
Yeah. I don't know, but in the back of my mind, I kept picturing those aliens from like The Simpsons, the one that's like, "Oh, I'm bringing you peace."
Yeah.
Because they're just there, like they're just trying to have a good time.
And I might have read it wrong, but did they do the thing where like they all spoke in unison sometimes?
Yeah.
I'm just like, ugh.
So that's another really awesome scene that I would want, like, if they ever created a cinematic universe, have that interaction between the two forces, because it also reminded me of the first Dune movie when basically the navigators are talking to that. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, it's so unnatural and unnerving because you don't know what to expect.
They're so polite and smiley.
They have a
pleasant.
smile on them.
It's just they're facing down with like a bunch of Astartes from the World Eaters, and they're just like, oh yeah.
I like how they described the heraldry of the World Eaters, because they connected it. They were like, Gilliman and his like Smurfs wear this, that. But for the World Eaters, the only thing that makes a difference between rank is that robe that he was wearing, the cloak. Yeah, I thought that was pretty cool.
Yep.
But then, the three of them turn out to be simulacrum.
Yep.
Yeah, and they don't even like fight. It's
they just get killed.
Yeah, it's the World Eaters that like draw the first blood, so to speak.
Because they're basically like, hey, listen, we know you want to conquer the galaxy. You just go away. We'll do our thing. You'll do your thing. We'll be fine. And obviously, the World Eaters aren't going to be like, okay, so.
It's funny how quickly you jump on the side of the World Eaters and you're like, yeah, kill them. When in reality, all these well, I guess they're robots or like vat-grown things. All they're doing is basically saying like, no, we're fine. We don't want to participate. Yep. And it's like, nope, not enough. So it's like, if you really look at it, the Gunnins are the victims here.
And, I mean, yeah, that's true. And this is a theme that keeps popping up throughout the whole Horus Heresy. It's like humans just want to do their own thing. They don't want to join the Imperium, but the Imperium is like the big roided out bully that's like, no, my way or the highway.
And that's what makes them bad guys, right? Like that's why there's no good guys in 40K, even the humans that we're supposed to relate to.
Yeah.
One of the World Eaters is Karn.
Oh, yes.
I did not expect Karn to be that
cool.
With
badass.
I mean, he's badass in the sense that like, he's very stoic, and I didn't expect that.
On Audible, he's got a cool Russian accent.
Yeah.
God, this book made me love Karn. I've listened to other books and I loved Karn then, but this like reminded me how much I liked Karn.
Yeah, I really saw a huge difference between the way the book explains it and the Karn that we know from 40K.
Oh, yeah. Obviously,
the Karn from 40K has the butcher's nails, is crazy, did the whole killing his own kind and all that kind of stuff, but still.
You would never expect that of the Karn that we meet in this book.
He's also very on the side of the butcher's nails, I've noticed.
Yep. Yeah.
Which we'll get to in
He's Angron's equerry, right? So he's like the closest Astarte to Angron.
Yeah, and they kind of go over why. They kind of explain the whole. I don't know if they talked about it during the Horus Heresy series, but it's that whole concept of he was the only one that looked Angron in the eyes.
Yeah,
he killed like other dudes. That's fucking crazy.
I don't know if you guys know the story, but I find myself really wanting to know why, because it says early on in this chapter that the old head of the Legion was killed by Angron, like right away of the Warhounds, and I want to know why. I want to know that story.
Yeah,
because it's just like, and because the Magos, he like looks back, he's like, oh, if that guy was still in charge, we wouldn't have these problems right now.
True. And
I'm like, what happened to make Angron? I mean, it probably didn't take much, but there are characters in this book that did things that I thought for sure would mean that they would die.
Oh, dude, 100%.
Talking to Angron like that.
Yeah.
I mean, and because I don't remember too much of, and that's later on in the chapter, but it's a chapter that's coming up anyways, but did he like run away from Angron when Angron went crazy and started killing everybody?
No.
The main dude, the guy
Magos, yeah.
No, he stood his ground.
Well, he was telling everybody to stay away from him.
Yeah.
So kind of running, but more like just like give him a wide berth.
Yeah. Well, before we get into that, so basically they killed these simulacrums. The other thing I wanted to say about the simulacrums, though, it made me think of Death Corps of Krieg. And you know how the Death Corps of Krieg, the rumor is that they're doing vat-grown, basically simulacrum, in order to, like, replace them. And that's the reason why the Imperium says no. You can't have vat-grown creatures because the Great Crusade showed that that shit don't work.
Yeah, because you could basically just create your own army.
So then they killed the 3 diplomats, I guess. And then Karn's like, I'm going to take one of these guys back to Angron and see what he wants to do.
And that's when we get the description of Angron in his fucking lair.
Yeah.
I imagine it was like a massive room that's just pitch dark with one light with an apothecary looking over, and is he just like writhes? And
No. The way they describe Angron, I just think of the Beast from Beauty and the Beast.
Same.
Like he's hunched over, he's always angry,
drooling and bleeding out of his nose.
He's just a monstrous thing.
The way to describe the scene when they walk into it, the smell of the blood of a demigod, like just all over, and then he destroyed all of the lights.
Yeah.
So it's a cave. It's a literal cave.
Yep.
And then we finally get to hear Angron speak to Karn, and it's not what I thought. Like Angron being a Primarch that's supposed to embody like rage and anger, he seems stupid to me.
Yeah, after reading this first half, I thought to myself, what was Big E thinking? Like, this dude's a maniac. Who thought it was a good idea to put this guy in charge of a legion?
Yeah.
He's awful. He's not a good leader, and he doesn't like care for his legion.
Nope.
What
you get
what
that right
does
away.
he bring? He's a good fighter, but like,
It's his son. He can't just leave him out there.
but he doesn't have to lead a legion. I mean, he did it. I think it was like an ego thing from Big E, or it was like, this is my son, so he'll lead a legion. But like, he's not good at it.
No. And I think that because later on in the book, I think when everybody's kind of looking at Angron, they describe that to a human looking at Angron, like, yes, he seems like a demigod, but only a Space Marine can look at Angron and truly be in awe of him, because it's only like the fact that it's like, it's kind of like when we play 40K, and like if you just start 40K and you're looking at a player that knows his shit, you're like, oh, cool, this guy's awesome. But it takes a veteran to see somebody who's been playing for a while that's better than them to be like, oh, I truly appreciate you. So that kind of thing. So there's that. So yeah, Angron is fucking crazy and stuff, but there's that aspect of like, damn, he's awesome. And then the whole back and forth between Karn and Angron, I liked when Karn pulled back to talk to the apothecary and be like, like whispering, like, what the fuck, like what's going on? And then Angron's like, what are you saying?
I can hear you.
Yeah. Which goes to show that like there's so much. What is that called? Like when you think people are plotting against
Paranoia.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's just a paranoid freak.
And this is Karn, who is, in title at least, the most trustworthy Astartes that Angron has. Like, this is the guy that he goes to for everything.
Yeah.
And he's still like paranoid and like, why are you plotting in the corner over there, kind of thing.
Yeah, and then the apothecary, the way that the book makes him out to be is just kind of like, yeah, I know, like our father's a fucking crazy psychopath.
Yeah, it's almost like you're taking care of like your dad who has like dementia or something.
Yeah.
I have a note here that's like, it's like Angron is the abusive dad, and all of the Astartes are like still worship him because he's their dad. It's like that weird relationship where it's like, this guy's awful to you, but he's your dad, so you're like glorifying him. Even though you know he does shitty things.
Yeah. But Angron's order is basically just, okay, it doesn't matter that these guys are simulacrum, go kill them.
Yeah, and then they go to this battle, which, due to their doctrines, they have 31 hours to accomplish.
Yeah, which is insane.
A Nucerian day, right?
Yes.
Here you start to hear Angron make a shit ton of references to his gladiators from his world. So in a way, it kind of goes to show that his mind is still stuck on that last day, because we know the story of Angron and being rescued by the Emperor. He was basically taken away at a point where his men needed him the most. So he just keeps reliving that like regret of like, I wasn't there. these were real men. You Space Marines are shit.
Which is wild when you think about it, because these are like chemically and surgically altered humans that are like capable of extraordinary things. But Angron is still just like, you're nothing compared to these humans with butcher's nails that I fought in the pits with.
Yeah, it's pretty. I mean, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
To think of like the gladiators, and hopefully in the second part we get more of those gladiators.
Yeah. And you see more of this whole like PTSD that Angron's like exhibiting, and again, the Emperor's to blame.
Yeah.
Like, why would you do it this way?
Yeah.
Like, there's so many instances where he goes to reclaim his sons, and he does it in a much kinder way, a much more accepting way. But with Angron, it's just like, let me get him at his worst.
And he, like, it makes me think like it was a lot of Big E, but you gotta get over it eventually. Or it's either that, or like it takes over his whole life. And I know part of that is probably the butcher's nails, like doing that. But he's really the worst. Like, he's probably the worst Primarch, not in terms of like martial prowess, but just like in that role of being a Primarch.
Yeah.
And I didn't expect that, really. I thought he was at least some sort of strategist or like had some sort of like leadership capability, but he really doesn't.
Yeah. Well, and actually, when they start making Planetfall to do the Imperial compliance action, they describe how I think the Raven Guard fight this way, the Imperial Fist fight this way, but the World Eaters were conquerors. That was the word that they described the World Eaters as, and it just goes to show that like Angron's way of fighting is mindless.
Well, it was interesting too, because they said like they said Jagatai Khan and the wolves, the space wolves, they'll roar and they'll run into battle. And I expected that of them too, but it proves how much they changed in 40K, because you expect that of them when they fall. Yeah. But they said they just walk onto the battlefield. They walk towards in like a march towards their enemy. And I would have never expected that of the World Eaters, even pre Butcher's Nails.
Very martial and very like stoic and stuff.
Like inevitable death coming at you, just like calmly and I don't know, it was interesting.
And these, because it's like chapter 3 through like 7, that's like the whole battle. So many really awesome. This is when we were talking about the spoiler-free stuff. So many awesome imagery of just like them prepping, them dropping, them walking, that kind of stuff. I'm just excited for a cinematic universe in 40K. Yeah. For that reason. Or in the past, too, I felt like if they do the Great Crusade and the Horus Heresy as a cinematic universe, that's going to suck. No Xenos during that time, or the Xenos that exist are pointless. But no, after reading and listening to this, I'm like, oh, yeah, no. That would be fucking awesome.
The way that they described like the swamp of like amber gore just everywhere around them, and like the bodies that just piled up.
Yeah. But it's also important to note, Angron did not go to fight with his legion.
He didn't participate. He was just, again, in his cave.
And you kind of have to ask yourself why. And the explanation...
Karn did ask why.
And yeah, his explanation was just like, why? Why do you need me? Exactly. I can't be doing everything for you. Yeah. It's like, you haven't done shit for me. You've killed a bunch of our men. But yeah, so then they encountered the Simulacrum.
Yeah, such a weird enemy. I would have never expected them to fight a weaponless, armorless, like... hive mind, to put it simply.
They put horde to the maximum. Like, this is what a horde really is. Millions and millions of just bodies.
If you've seen World War Z, it's that minus running.
Yeah. And they all have smiles, which is just awesome.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that saved that the whole battle for me is I thought of World War Z. And then I was like, okay, now it kind of makes sense. But in the beginning, it just didn't make sense to me. How could a Space Marine die to like it's like that whole story of a one baby, or what is it, like one big ass baby or 40 like small babies kind of thing, that thing,
a T-Rex sized baby or a bunch of baby sized T-Rexes.
But it just made me feel like, nah, Space Marines can take out
I still
humans.
Don't believe, like, there's a bunch of these guys and they're like, the weight of them is able to crush a Space Marine's power armor, and they were saying like their fingers were clawing and breaking the lenses in their armor.
I think what I heard was they pulled the helmet off and gouged their eyes out. But like it's crazy to think, because in the beginning, I love how the battle escalated too, Because it says at first they just walk in and just push them.
Yeah.
Like, oh, we're going to get to the center of the city. So they just start pushing them. And eventually the bodies start to swarm in more and more. And eventually they start to push back. And then they have to start killing. It's just like such a slow like escalation. And then they start hacking away.
Yeah.
I love that, like, in typical World Eaters fashion, instead of using a gun, because there's 2 times when Magos pulls out his pistol and blast, like a Volkite pistol, and it says blast a huge swath out of the enemy, and then puts it away and starts hacking away with his axe.
Yeah.
It's like, if you all had guns, this would probably be a little bit easier, but that's just not their style.
They didn't use guns till like the very end.
When the whirlwind came,
I liked how there were so many bodies that eventually the chainswords got dull.
Gunked up.
Yep.
Yeah.
That was crazy.
And the way they described it reminded me of the Battle of the Bastards too. How like there's just walls of corpses around them that just like stop them from being able to move.
Yeah.
And like when they got into the city, they would just like fall onto the city, and they jumped into the turbines of jets as they flew by, and it's just like, wow.
Here is where you really get a lot of Magos' inner thoughts of just like, what the fuck are we doing? And then he starts describing how we got to remember that all these men are fighting because they would much rather die here fighting this pointless, pathetic like enemy than go back on the ship and get killed by Angron.
If they fail. Because
Yeah.
after 31 hours is up and you don't succeed, you have failed.
Yeah. So it was one of those. It was him reminding the listener that like Angron sucks as a leader. So a lot of these people, like, they shouldn't be dying like this.
No.
This arbitrary 31 hours where without that, this would have been a successful campaign. But since after 31 hours, we fail just because Daddy says we failed, and so we got to go back and like take the punishment.
The thing that I kept going back to is like they were scared of Angron killing them, but at the same time, that's kind of how the Imperial Guard operates nowadays.
Scared of like the commissars?
The commissars will kill one to like motivate and like improve morale.
Those are more like cowards, though, right? And like,
Well, I
if
mean,
morale is like, oh, let's get out of here, the commissar just blasts them. I don't think the death would be on the same scale as what the commissars do.
True. I mean, it's not to that extent, but I just thought it was a little bit of like mirroring to the recent stuff.
Yeah. Also, commissars, like, I mean, it's a human versus an orc versus a space marine versus like a, what is it? A baby-sized dinosaur. But there was something. I kept thinking to myself, why not send orbital bombardment? Like, that's what 40K is known for.
They say that in the book too.
Yeah, and then they described that. Well, last time that happened, Angron got so pissed he fucking killed all of the the naval dudes,
the navigators.
Because they fired on them without his permission and killed a bunch of world eaters.
Yeah.
And then he went up and killed them all.
Yeah.
So now, not only are they afraid to do that again, I think Magos also says, like, that's not how Angron wants this done. He doesn't want to just bomb the planet. He wants us on there doing something.
Yeah. But yeah, it doesn't foreshadow, but it connects him to the Emperor in that, like, the Emperor had some stupid ass rules and Angron has some stupid ass rules. Like you said before, if those weird arbitrary rules weren't in place, this would have been an easy campaign.
Not easy, but like, there would be no extra pressure on them for no reason.
Yeah. And then eventually they fail.
Right.
Yeah.
31 hours runs out.
I liked the scene where there was a squad in trouble, like isolated by themselves, and there was some debate. Magos was like, we should go back and help them, and one of the other, his first axe or whatever, is like, no, we got to move forward. We got to get this done. Well, the time's almost up. He's like, no, we got to go help them. And then, like, he knows they'll go past 31 hours if they go backwards and try to help them, but because Magos is a good leader, I guess.
Yeah.
He decides to do it, and they fail. And then it feels weird because of the enemy they're fighting. They're just like, oh shit, 31 hours. There's the siren. We gotta leave, guys. And then the enemies, because they're not really fighters. They just let them leave.
Yeah.
It's just like, it feels like a game, like a football game. It's like, oh, time's up. We all go home now.
Yeah, that was a really cool scene, and it made me think again. Like, if there's a cinematic universe, imagine all these smiling, androgynous creatures who were just getting butchered, probably covered in blood. Just like, yeah, just bye. Yep. We're not going to move. We're going to stay where we are.
We're not chasing you. We're not, like, trying to hold you here. You're just leaving. Okay.
That's creepy and alien.
Yep.
Yeah.
So then they go back to the trophy hall or some shit? Yeah. And that's when they have to talk to Angron.
So they go to the trophy hall, and it feels like Angron starts to give this speech that he's done many times before, but he does it as if it's the first time. It's probably just for the benefit of the reader, but like he's just like shit talking his legion, like, wow, you guys suck. Like this wouldn't happen with my old crew.
Well, that specifically I found interesting because it almost felt like he was talking to the ghost of the gladiators. Mm-hmm. He's like, "Can you believe these dumbasses?"
Like half the conversation was to himself.
Yeah. And it makes me think of like that whole father-son dynamic or toxic dynamic of like the son can never do anything right, and the dad is like a football, high school glory dude, and he's just like talking shit. So I thought that was like, damn.
Yeah, definitely keeping in line with the whole PTSD thing. He's like, oh, I've fought, harder battles than this and I would have won. Like, what you guys are doing is like, they didn't even have weapons. Like, what? Like, fuck you guys. Like, this could be child's play.
He keeps calling them paper-skinned soldiers or something like that.
Yeah. I thought that was cool, yeah. I wrote that down because I thought about it and I was like, Angron really thinks that.
Yeah.
And then, before we get into what he does, like, all of the legionnaires are just like standing there like, oh fuck, we're gonna get fucked. But then they start thinking, or they look at Angron, and that's when they make the connection of like, but Angron's badass. Like he's my dad. He's strong. Like I'm like, gonna look up to him.
We just got done fighting a war, and he's talking to us like that. That guy's the man.
Yeah.
But not everybody thinks that way, though.
No. but even in his presence, Magos is like, he can't deny that this guy has something.
Yeah.
He has some type of juice.
Yeah.
He's got that Riz.
He's that guy.
There you go. Let him cook, guys.
And then he deals his judgment. And
I found it interesting the way the captains go first and like rub the dirt from the planet into the wounds.
I read that and I was like, oh yeah, that's a thing that the Legion does, and the World Eaters do it, like even in 40K. I didn't understand. They said cross though, right, or something like that.
Cross the ropes or something.
Yeah.
So do they get ropes and
twist the ropes?
Yeah. I didn't really understand that part. I was just kind of like, oh, just keep going.
Yeah.
Because it has to do with Angron on Nuceria with the gladiators, but I thought it had to do with the hair. So I don't know.
Yeah, maybe we'll learn more about it
during the whole thing. And then the thing that finally tips the scale is like we already talked about one battle brother per 10 that needs to
decimation.
Die. Yeah, because of that. And then obviously Magos is the one that stands up and says like, nah, we're not going to do that.
And Angron's like goes right into his face and is like, what the fuck did you say? Did you tell me no? Yeah. And I love how Angron has that like that view of himself, like he's so much better when like he does nothing for these people.
Yeah.
He just says go kill all these people. And sometimes he's with them.
Yeah,
but like he makes it seem like they owe him so much, and they would dare deny him what he commands.
The reason why I'm trying to justify that is because he knows they're his gene, spawn, whatever. So maybe he sees himself in them, and he sees, oh, these guys are me, and yet they're failing time and time again. He failed his gladiators when the emperor took them.
Self-loathing.
Yeah.
It's probably a mirror.
So maybe he's yelling at them how he wants to be, not ridiculed, but
how he thinks what he deserves.
Right.
Yeah.
So he's like projecting.
It's because he says too, Angron is like, you call me your father. You say you'll do whatever I ask you to do, but you won't do this. Like you're telling me no right now. Like what does that even mean then? But I think Magos was a badass for standing up like that. And then I was like, okay, this dude's dead. Yeah. There's no way that he's going to survive this.
Yeah.
But
he kills a Terminator. And the way that he kills the Terminator, you have the image of a Terminator, right? Like he's bigger than a Space Marine. Angron picks him up and breaks his head, like
rips his arms off.
Yeah. And then breaks him his head. That's like, what the fuck? To a Terminator.
And this is all because Magos said no. Like it snapped. Like it made Angron snap. And he's like, whoa. At first Angron's like, I like you. You speak your mind, but now do what I say. Yeah. And he's like, no, because he brings up a dude, a newer recruit, and Magos is about to kill him with a knife, and he's like, no, you gotta do it with your hands, Angron. And he's like, this is just cruel. Like, why are you making me do this? And he makes him say no again, and then Angron just goes ballistic.
And that's where you see like the chaoticness of this Primarch.
Yeah.
It's not something that any other Primarch would probably do to his sons. And then he just goes crazy and starts, like, in Beauty and the Beast. Isn't there a scene where, like, the Beast starts destroying stuff?
Oh, yeah. He
goes
starts,
crazy?
like, I mean, he's not killing people, but he's, like, destroying statues, you know, the wardrobe and shit like that.
In this, Angron starts just killing his sons.
I love that it says that all the legionaries like reach for their weapons, like they know that this is a threat, but none of them like fight. They all try to like calm him down or hold him down instead of like trying to fight for their lives. It just shows how much like reverence they put. It's like, this dude is literally killing you guys, and you guys are just like, oh, like we can stop him.
Yeah. And then it takes was it the whole conclave of the librarians?
Yeah.
That's when I kept thinking to myself, like, where's Ayakari? Where's Ayakari the first time around? And then, like, oh, he's not there.
That is fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then the librarians decide to do or enact this ritual called the sacrament, right? Or no, the
communion.
Communion.
Yeah.
Which this is like probably my least favorite part.
Me too.
Because it seemed like, oh, let's make a light kaiju to fight Angron.
It was like the whole room got cold, like they got like frost on their armor, and then they make some like dude with like a shield and spear, like a gladiator, to stop him.
That part didn't feel like 40K.
Yeah,
No.
it really didn't.
But
Like a fantasy novel or
Yeah,
something.
and it actually works. I didn't think that was gonna work.
Well, the warrior doesn't do anything, but then they like project his memories and like lull him to sleep, essentially.
Yeah.
I do like that when the librarians were in that state of trying to attack him, they can pick up on the energies and the thoughts of all the other Battle Brothers within the hall. And then the Battle Brothers are just being like, what the fuck do we do? What is this? So that was pretty cool. But yeah.
Something that I thought when I was listening to this was, we know that the Librarius for the World Eaters goes away. So what happens when this happens in the future when the Librarius isn't there to stop him?
Angron and the World Eaters in 40K hate Psychers because Khorne hates Psychers. So this is one of those like, oh yeah. Like,
And they hurt Angron to be around.
Yeah. But yeah, it works. And put him to sleep.
Yeah, they put him in like a comatose state, as well as putting another of their own.
Yeah, well, I forget his name, but he looks too deep into the memories and gets trapped there with Angron.
Yeah.
He gets saved essentially because other librarians die.
Not all of them do, but
No.
a good chunk of them do. Yeah.
Because he was one of the young ones too, right?
Yep.
And then they talk about that later on when they take him back to the Apothecarion and they're watching over him. They're like, well, he's lucky he's still in two places at once because all the other ones just
Yeah.
yeah.
Then it's cool how they say like how every librarian is like a ticking time bomb, because you don't know if their death is going to be like a huge explosion or what's going to happen.
Yep.
Because they have so much overflowing power.
Yeah.
Again, mirroring exactly who Angron is.
And this is when we start actually getting the story of Angron, seen through memories that this... I wish I knew the name of this guy's, the librarian that's stuck in there. I want to say Tristan, but that's not it.
It's with an A. It's like Anithros or something like that.
We got completely different ideas of what this guy's name
I thought it starts with an A. But yes, so you are seeing Angron's childhood memories. It starts off with him on the mountains being attacked by these creatures. Initially, I thought like, okay, the Primarch doesn't know what humans look like. Humans are attacking him. These creatures must be human. They weren't. They were legit creatures attacking him.
I thought they were humans.
No,
Some pelts.
because later on, humans actually come over and they're, because he was screaming and they're like, well, what was going on? And then that's when they capture him. So, because he can tell the difference in the voice. It's like...
But isn't it like they're feral, or like... I thought it was like kind of like Vikings versus like actual
they
slave
were like
traders.
they were humans that were
maybe.
like dressed up because it was cold on the mountaintops,
Yeah.
and they that's how I took
That's
it,
how
at
I
least.
saw it too.
Yeah, because the way it was described, I thought these were creatures. Because the voice was different from the ones that capture him. So, like, why would...
Oh, I think they mean
Angron-
the language. Like, they're speaking Nucerian, and he doesn't understand it.
Oh.
And
Then why would
eventually-
the other guys not speak Nucerian?
That I don't know. But
Different regions.
there was
or
like
something.
one dude that like he could understand, and then he slowly starts picking up the language.
I like how... Because it reminds me of 300 when, like, he's getting hunted by wolves.
That's what I thought too.
But I like how in the initial assault, he's the hunted, and then he becomes a hunter, and then
It reminded me of Thor Ragnarok. When Thor crash lands on the gladiator planet, and those guys just like come out of a ship and start blasting him and like throw a net over him.
yeah. And then they take him to basically an arena, right?
Yeah, a gladiatorial.
Ziggurat.
And it's a Tethys. That's the librarian that's like stuff.
Tethys, okay.
Are you sure it's not Anathra?
Maybe that was his last name.
Yeah.
Tethys Anathra.
Yeah. I really like the Ziggurat scene because the way it is like basically a pyramid, right? Like they're
Like
on there,
a
a
tiered
shit ton
pyramid.
of them, and then they start filling the arena with acid,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
and then you just see them fight each other. So that they don't
American
die.
gladiator style.
But then that goes to show. So like during the initial phase when we're thinking, why is Angron so comfortable with just pointless killing? Because he lived through it like from the moment he landed.
And I like that he wasn't. Like he specifically did things on that ziggurat to make sure that they didn't die being dissolved by acid.
Yeah.
He was compassionate for the people that he had to kill
Yeah.
because at first he didn't even want to kill anybody.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, well, I'm going to crush your head. I'm going to crack your neck before you get into the acid so you don't suffer.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's great. Like it shows the character
Change.
arc that he has and how much the butcher's nail really fucked him up.
Yeah, and not only the butcher's nails, but also just the concept of if you're surrounded by constant killing and pointless killing, like eventually that erodes your mind, and then you realize that like death doesn't matter.
Desensitized to
Yeah,
it.
yeah, that kind of
And,
thing.
and that and like the will to survive.
Yeah.
Like you have to do this to survive. Like you got to get over your sentimentality about these other people that you have to kill.
Right, yeah, because they were people that some of them were even trying to hurt him.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then is that when we start getting all the different trials that he's basically going through, or is that kind of like sprinkled throughout the rest of the chapter?
Yeah, it's kind of sprinkled.
With the Psyker and then the Hound and
Well, the
guy in
Psyker's the
Hound.
last
The
trial
last
we
one.
see.
Yeah, but yeah, that's when we the little like what do they call them? The drones.
Yeah.
They come up, and then that's when he realizes, oh, there's someone else who's doing this to me. I won. And then the first words that he speaks in Nucerian is this a game? And I thought that was pretty cool because as 40K players, especially like me, an orc player, I don't give a fuck about my boys. Like, yeah, go send them to the Dreadnought. Who cares if they die? That's what Angron is doing with his Space Marines. I'm just like, fuck it, go. So I made that connection of like, oh, Angron is okay with sending his battle brothers to die so pointlessly because it's
He
a
doesn't
game.
value them, yeah.
Yeah, so I thought that his first word saying, is this a game, was kind of cool.
And again, it mirrors it because it's like the Emperor is like the guy on top kind of playing everything out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, but yeah, we get that. And then that's when we go back to.
Cut back to Magos, I think.
Yeah.
And then we have the whole kind of confrontation, Magos versus Karn.
Yeah.
Which I thought was really cool.
That was cool.
Because, well, first of all, like the pits, the fighting pits.
They go into the fighting pits.
It was a ritual. Did it say if it was a ritual that Angron created or if it's a ritual that...
All Space Marines do that.
all of them?
Yeah, because even with the Luna Wolves, we see them do that time and time again. Is like not just to practice, but also to form bonds through, through battle.
I thought it was a World Eater started thing, but I think you might be right.
I mean, even if the World Eaters did start it, I mean, all Space Marines pretty much do it.
It was quickly adopted.
Yeah.
I think it's funny that so when I've heard about that ritual being done, I always thought like, oh, that's some like alpha male like blah, blah, bullshit. But then the way that they describe Karn and Magos fighting, they're just talking, and it's like his mind is the clearest when he's actually in combat talking to his brother. It made me think of like, oh yeah, when I go to the gym and like I have a gym buddy, it's different. Like you form that connection because you guys are being physical. So it's like, oh yeah, like that would be really like you can open up in a way that you couldn't from just like sitting down and talking.
Yeah. And this is when the two ideologies of the Legion kind of clash in an arena. Karn is very much pro Butcher's Nails because it's the will of his father, and like he thinks this is like their job are tools to their swords.
Yep.
That's their only purpose, and if this makes them better swords, then this is good. Whereas Magos is like, these Butcher's Nails are killing us. This is not good. Look what it does to Angron. You want to do this to the whole Legion. Is this worth it?
Yeah.
And I think both sides make some good points.
Oh yeah, definitely. But I'm more so on the side of Magos. I don't know about you guys.
I think we're supposed to be because
Yeah.
like we also know what happens. Like
Right.
we know that Butcher's Nails definitely aren't a good thing.
Yeah.
And it destroys the Legion. But even at the time, like Magos has more humanity towards everybody else. He doesn't see himself as a sword.
That's true.
These are people that like.
And Karn actually brings that up. He says, you still see yourself as more human.
Yeah.
And he's like, look at us. We're like the farthest thing from that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought that was a really good illustration of basically the entire book and the chapters that we're reading of like, oh, this is what they're fighting about. The book says Angron, but it's really Butcher's nails and the problem and the dilemma.
It's the whole like identity crisis between Karn and Magos and like the Warhounds and the World Eaters, like growing into this new thing where like some people are resisting the change and some people are embracing it.
Yeah.
And I got a passage here between the two that I think really embodies it. So Magos says he's broken, talking about Angron, like he's blood mad, tortured, and you would see us follow him into such a fate. So basically he's saying, like, you want us to become exactly like our Primarch is. No thought, just a mass of anger and pain. And then at the very end of it, he says, this is Karn, brother, you speak as if we ever had a choice at all.
Yeah.
And that is 100% true.
Yeah. For Space Marines in general, I think Space Marines, that concept of like individuality it's gone as soon as you go through the indoctrination process.
It's like you lose your humanity by becoming a Space Marine. Not just that, but you lose freedom.
Yeah.
You're a soldier through and through. No thought, no action. You just do whatever you're told.
Yeah.
And the conflict of this idea is actually seen earlier when they're at war with the Genins, when Magos sees some of his brothers fighting like Angron does and says, if they didn't fight like that, this would be better. And then people who think the Butcher's Nails is the way to go says, if you didn't fight with compassion and like for the other brothers around you, this would be better.
Yeah.
So each truly believes that like what the best way to move forward is whatever side that they're on.
Yeah. And that's where it's cool knowing what happens in the Horus Heresy, especially with the Drop Site Massacre and all that kind of stuff, of the Terran-born traitors are put in the front lines.
Yeah.
So the ones that would say, no, Butcher's Nails are bad, those would be the ones that end up getting killed. I mean, they get the Butcher's Nails put into them, but whatever. But yeah, the battle was really badass. And Karn wins, right? He gets first blood.
Well, no, I think he loses because because it's to first blood, and Karn splits his knuckle on Magos and then bleeds into the sand.
Oh, that's perfect then.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like the Butcher's Nails, like, sure, you won, but at what cost?
Yeah.
Yeah. Or like you lost at the cost of that whole thing. But yeah. And then after that, is that when we get to the...
Yeah, that's pretty much when we get more of the whole backstory.
It shows Angron like picking up an old gladiator helmet filled with like brains and stuff.
Oh yeah.
And then he just goes out there and they just start killing each other.
Yeah. Oh, the Psyker too, right? Is that
That's
part?
the
last part of it. Yeah.
I thought that scene was really cool because it goes to show the craziness of unsanctioned psychers.
How powerful they are.
Yeah.
I was also a part when he was fighting the Psyker that it says that one of the dudes that he went out with is just exploded into blood, and it makes a symbol on the ground that Angron couldn't read.
And it like hurts just by looking at it. Yeah.
I think that's Chaos Undivided because I know the thought would be like, oh, maybe it's Korn. But Korn doesn't like psychers. Why would you be manipulating that one? Or maybe it's Zinch.
Zinch. Could be any of them, really.
But yeah, I really like that part too.
Yeah. Just a small little thing that you could just like read right over, but it's like, oh, that's something.
Yeah. And also when they describe the psyker, well, they don't describe the psyker too much. It's a woman, right?
It's like a frail little girl with like a contraption on her neck. That's causing her pain so that she like lashes out with psychic powers.
And that's when he realized, oh, the girl doesn't even want to be doing this. Yeah.
So essentially it's a mercy kill that like Angron does.
Well, I think at first he's like, oh, I guess I got to kill this person, and then she just annihilates everyone around him, and he's the last one standing. He's like, I have to survive this. I have to kill this woman to survive.
But as he's killing her, he notices it's not her. It's the contraption.
Yeah. And then throughout this entire time, is the librarian, what is, do you like?
Tethys?
Yeah.
These are like visions that he's seeing through like memories of Angron.
But he's not saying anything, right?
No. I mean, he'll notice like, oh, this is a psyker, or he'll be like, he'll give you a little bit of exposition and he'll give you his thoughts. But like, he's pretty much like the Watcher in like Marvel, just kind of seeing things as they happen.
He's like us, like we're the vessel of seeing these images that Angron already knows, but we're like a passenger along the biography of his life kind of thing.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's an interesting way of showcasing Angron's life, right, as a child.
Yeah.
And then the last chapter that we were supposed to read was Magos talking to, or we're back on the ship. Magos talking to, or still with the dilemma of like, should my legion get the butcher's nails?
Yeah.
Did I fuck up by going into this, not thinking that like, the job would have gotten done if people were as crazy as Angron. So he goes to one of the first. What are they?
Contemptor Dreadnought, like an old, like whatever his title was,
like a chapter master, but not for the Legion.
Yeah, like he has his cloak on.
Yeah, and I like how they wake him up and he's like, "Why the fuck are you wearing my cloak?" And because when dreadnoughts get awakened, part of their memory kind of goes away. Because I mean, you're in stasis.
I kind of read that more as like a joke though, because like then he's like, it looks good on you, like it suits you.
That's true. That's true. The charisma was there.
Yeah,
he has Riz.
I want to fuck that dreadnought.
Yeah. But yeah, then he basically the whole conversation between them two. I was surprised that the dreadnought was like,
yeah, me too.
Get the butcher's nails, man.
Well, he was more like, what was his message? It was more like,
we're tools.
We got to see, like, we got to figure out what's going on before we make a decision, kind of thing. Like,
but I was gonna say, like, as Magos was talking to him, I don't know if it's just me, but I kind of got like a feeling that Magos was actually thinking, "Are we gonna be the first Legion to kill our Primarch?"
Yeah.
Oh, like a true mutiny?
Yeah. It makes
true.
me want that to happen, even though I know it's not going to happen. Like, just kill this dude. He's no good for you.
Yeah.
But
if they did that, like, they were going to be completely eradicated.
Yeah, they would have been killed.
Again, no choice.
Yep.
They're going to be killed regardless.
Now I remember, because that's when he makes the reference of, like, hey, remember, 2 other legions were destroyed.
Yeah.
Ours can be the same, so don't think you could just kill Angron and get away with it. Which I didn't realize. I guess I don't know the timeline, but I didn't realize that the other 2 legions were already destroyed by now.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I thought that was cool. And then the dreadnought is like, you know what? Don't put me back to sleep. I want to see how this turns out.
Yeah.
And that's where it ends, right?
Yep.
Scene.
I'm really excited to keep reading. I like this Magos character, and I like Karn, and they're like the viewpoints for both like perspectives. So I want to see. I don't know anything. I've never heard of Magos before this book. Have you guys?
No.
Okay, so
yeah, it's not looking good for the boys.
But those are our thoughts on the chapters that we've read so far. If you guys have already read Angron, Slave of Nuceria, let us know what you thought of the first part. No spoilers, please. Or you could do it. I don't give a fuck. By the time this video comes out, we've already read the other part anyways, right?
True.
Yeah. But if this has like sparked your interest in learning more about Angron, definitely go to our link and get that Audible,
I will say the Audible book is really good. Like the narrator.
Except the chapter part. Chapters are off.
Oh yeah, it's whatever. It's fine. The actual narration of the book is really well done. I think it's the same guy who does like the first books of the Horus Heresy.
Okay,
he's really good job.
Yeah, because I know you guys are doing Audible, right?
Yep.
I'm actually reading it, so I feel like I'm getting a different experience than what you guys are.
Yeah.
But yeah, hearing a Russian Karn, I'm really interested in that.
He sounds so cool. Fucking cool.
Yeah, very badass.
Yeah.
But again, use the link down in the description below. It's a way for you guys to support this whole book club because we are not on the One Mind Syndicate page. If you guys want to get lore videos, jump on over to the One Mind Syndicate page if you don't know that. We also have other podcasts where we talk about randomness on the tabletop and just the lore of Warhammer 40K, so subscribe to the channel for more. And then we also have the Greater Wogs, a separate channel.
So just to keep the balls rolling and your guys' thoughts, flowing into the comment section, please let us know what you think we should do. But before that, we will be covering Magnus.
After we do our second half of this book, the book after that will be Magnus. So you have a little bit of a head start if you want to start listening earlier, so you know what we're talking about before the video comes out.
Or if you guys are heavily like, don't read Magnus, you have to read this first. Let us know in the comments.
Yeah, for sure. We'll talk to you guys next week then when we do part 2.
Yeah, and as always, thank you guys for watching, commenting, liking, subscribing, share to all your friends. And as always, it's been the Sound Alchemist here with
Gershwan,
Docile Creature,
and we are signing out.
Always used to put my freedom first in any situation.